Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as the pioneer website in the United States for faith-based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights, vegan resources, and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons and Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan authored books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors and poets. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crush, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe, from the past and present, who honor the dignity of each and every creature, so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So today, I'm very honored to welcome the co-founder of Creation Care Church, Craig Wescoe. Craig's journey began in 2003 with his baptism into Christ. He then went on to earn a master's degree in philosophy and religious studies at the University of Toledo in 2008, followed by 5 years of teaching undergraduate courses. A turning point came in 2009 when his studies of the Bible led him to adopt a vegan lifestyle. Fueled by this newfound conviction, Craig founded Swords to Plowshares Ministry in 2013. Through this ministry, he has authored over a dozen articles and created over 50 educational videos exploring the concept of God's love for animals. Craig's passion extends beyond writing and teaching. Since becoming an animal rights activist in 2015 and organizer in 2019, he has participated in over 200 actions, protests, rescues, and outreach events. Craig also continues to share his knowledge within the church community. In 2019, he began teaching at Loma Linda University Church and coordinating small group Bible studies. Since 2021, he has served as an editor and a weekly Friday night live speaker for Creation Care Church. So welcome, Craig. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Well, I definitely want to start off with a little prayer, some words of comfort, and I know that you are the perfect being for that. So I would love to invite you to center us in a prayer, if you would, Craig.
Sure. All right, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we just thank you for this opportunity to just share whatever it is that we could share. And we just ask for your peace to be upon us and your grace. And we just pray for your kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven, and that all beings may live in peace together in your world, just as you desired and established from the beginning. So we just pray all this in your Son Jesus' name, Yeshua HaMashiach, Emmanuel. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Craig. That's beautiful. Well, I'm excited to reconnect with you. I know we talked about a year ago, and I want to see what's new with you. But perhaps for those folks that might not know anything about you, I'd love to hear when did you become vegan, and what led you to make the transition?
So I first started, I guess, the transition in 2003, and I guess I fully became vegan in 2009. And this was largely in response to my studies of the Bible, where I just kind of had these questions where it's like, wait, so in the beginning in Genesis 1, he created us and gave us a plant-based diet in Genesis 1:29 and told us that's very good to eat that diet. And then he tells us to show love to our fellow neighbors and to uh, to bear the fruit of the Spirit of peace and joy and long suffering and kindness. And it's like, well, why would I be doing the opposite to animals? Why would I be eating animals if that's the opposite of what we were designed to do? And so I wasn't getting any good answers as to why to do that. And so I was like, well, I think that I should be not doing this anymore. And then the more I looked into it, and the more I realized that that really is God's will, and that this is the right thing to do. So that was kind of my transition path to vegan.
Well, that's wonderful. I love the way you connected the dots with your spiritual beliefs, your religious beliefs, because we see so many people that don't make that connection. So it's a blessing to know someone that has and has taken action.
Hmm.
So, yeah. And so when you went vegan, did you have supports within your family or friendships, or did you find yourself isolated at the start?
Yeah, I actually didn't even know what a vegan was when I started, and I didn't really have any support from anyone. I there's actually one person who, when I decided to go vegan, they were like, "All right, I'm going to go vegan with you," and they lasted one day. So that didn't really last very long. So I guess I had one day of support. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting story. My dad, after I went vegan, he was really concerned about my health. So he's like, "Oh, I know you're doing it for God and for the animals, but I'm really concerned about your health. It can't be healthy. You need to get protein and your nutrients and whatever." And so this went on for maybe like 3 or 4 years. And then one day he calls me out of the blue and he's like, "Craig, I just got back from my doctor, and you'll never guess what he said. He said I have high blood pressure and high cholesterol and that I need to start eating like you." And so he kind of tried going vegan for a few weeks, but then he's like, "I'm just going to take a pill or whatever." But the one good thing that came from that is that when his doctor told him to be vegan, he actually looked into it and saw that there's all these health benefits to it. So then he stopped worrying about me and my health. So basically, anything that I would say to him, he would ignore. But then when his doctor finally told him, "No, actually, your son's right," then he actually looked into it. So.
That's all. That seems to be the case. Yes, I love that the doctor that he had a doctor that said that. That's amazing, also.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a great story. So what about now? Are you surrounded by many vegans?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think the more involved that I got with animal rights and doing outreach about veganism, especially online, meeting people who are also trying to get the message out there, like working together with them, and then doing things in person with people. Uh, yeah, that I think you kind of find your tribe, and then that's veganism is such a major thing. It's not just, hey, this is my diet or this is whatever. This is a major part of your life, and it affects like all aspects of life. So yeah, I definitely have a lot more support now than I did when I started.
Yeah, and that's very crucial that we find the support that we need. So if you're watching, let us know if you have any questions or comments, and let us know where you're joining from, everyone. So, and also give StreamYard permission to use your name. We'd love to hear what you think about everything we're talking about. So, Craig, how does the peace of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
Well, like I kind of said, it manifests in really all aspects. So obviously, when you sit down to eat, that's uh, one of the places that people first think about. But it's also in other ways as well, that when you kind of look around and see that the whole world around you, not the whole world, but it seems like the whole world around is doing the opposite. They're kind of working against this idea of treating animals kindly and not hurting them. And so it's really kind of an overall philosophy of life, kind of an ideology that uh, it's almost like a purpose as well, where when, like, I used to do this outreach, it's called the Save movement, where we would go to slaughterhouse. This was Farmer John with like a pig slaughterhouse. We would stop the transport trucks and give water to these pigs just before they would be shipped into the slaughterhouse. And I think just that sort of bearing witness and being like, this is horrible things that are going on in the world today, and like, we're the ones who, as people, we're the only ones who can really do something about it to stop our fellow people from doing these things to animals. And so there's kind of like this urgency about it as well, that it's like there's truckload after truckload after truckload that's going in. And if people just become educated about what's going on and realize that this is wrong and they should stop doing it, that I think just kind of spreading that message is also just a really big part of it, how that manifests.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, and that is so courageous. I mean, I don't know if I could do that. I think I imagine it, and I imagine seeing of that beautiful being. I mean, having my eyes connect, and just the gift that you're giving, right? Knowing that you're giving this gift of love, and you're not. I mean, it's such a unconditional love. It's beautiful. Did you did you ever was there ever anything when you said you stopped the trucks? So how did that go? I mean, how did you stop the trucks? And was there any ever interaction with the driver? What was the? Did you have any conversation, or how did that go?
Yeah, so the first Save movement that I was a part of was in Toronto, Canada, and this was the first group or it started in the beginning. And there was this lady, her name's Anita, and Anita would literally stand in the path of this moving semi truck full of animals, to where if the truck doesn't stop, it'll run her over. And so the truck would stop, and like that was the first time I had ever experienced something like that. I was like, wow, this lady's willing to stand in front of a semi truck to stop it just so we can have 2 minutes of giving water to these pigs. And to me, I think one of the reasons why I kept doing it was because it was motivation to me, where whenever you're in a conversation with someone and they say, oh, bacon, and mock you, and shut down the conversation and whatever else, or exclude you from meals or activities, or all the things that go with being vegan, it's like, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm not doing it to be included. I'm not doing it for any reason. I'm doing it for these animals. And if I stop doing this, like, they're gonna keep getting shipped to these slaughterhouses. And so to me, it was motivation to really put like faces uh, like on the victims. And it's like, this is an individual that I met, the day that they were slaughtered. And so like, it's for them that I'm doing this.
Yes, and that's so. It's just very blessed. I mean, this is a very blessed experience. And how are you able to use um, your connection with God to allow yourself to sleep in peace at night after you've witnessed this?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that without my faith, I would probably be in a similar position to a lot of animal activists who experience compassion fatigue and burnout, where for me, I feel like I kind of have to disconnect in a way from the reality. Like, I see the slaughterhouse footage, I see all these things that are happening, and if I allow it to really affect me in a big way, it'll just sort of paralyze me and I won't be able to do anything. So I have to kind of separate from it emotionally a little bit. And so just putting that trust in God, where it's like, I don't have to do all this myself. Like, the enormity of the problem of animal agriculture alone is just like, it's overwhelming. And so to know that there is a plan in place, and that there's someone far greater than me who has that plan and is orchestrating it, and I'm just called to play a small role in that sort of alleviates a lot of that burden from me. And so I can just do my job and kind of leave the results up to someone who is much better equipped to deal with those results, namely God.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. I mean, we all do have our role, and when you're at peace with your role, then I think you can sleep at night because you're saying, I did what I needed to do, and it might have been challenging, but then you celebrate how courageous you are. I think I would be celebrating, wow, I really did it. I think it's a beautiful, that would help me sleep in peace at night. And even sending the animals love when you're, and the prayers that we can send the animals. I mean, it's all vibrating through the universe. So I mean,
Yeah,
prayer is amazing.
yeah, and it's also really good to see other people involved and caring just as much, because like the people who come to these things, they don't do it because it's fun. It's not fun to be doing animal activism, uh, but to see other people who care enough to keep doing it is also motivation, because it gives me a sense of I'm not doing this alone. There's other people who are also heavily involved in making this happen and fighting
Right.
this
And
fight.
yeah, and that's what you were talking about. And I mean, with getting your community, right? Building those friendships so you don't feel alone and you can get out there and make a difference together. Because when we come together, we make a bigger difference. So, yes, I mean, we need that for our spiritual health. Because we're all spiritual beings. And I didn't really understand. One time I went to hear Rob Bell and he talked about everything is spiritual. And I didn't really get it. I guess it was playing in the back of my mind because one day I thought, I understand. I wasn't even trying to mull over it or anything, but all of a sudden it came to me and I said, I understand now. Everything is spiritual. I mean, we are spiritual beings made of this grace and divinity. And even the laptop that I'm looking at is, can be looked at as all the hands that put it together, right? All the people. Those are spirit. That was a spiritual act to come together and make the laptop. I mean, I could see where it's just making a laptop, or it could be a spiritual experience of someone using using their knowledge and putting in their energy, and that's when it becomes spiritual. And so I don't even know what the point is, but I think the spirituality is such a huge element in my life, and to see how you're using your faith to ground you, and it's fueling everything you're doing. It's amazing.
Hmm. And it's also thinking of it from like the other side where uh, we're fighting against spiritual forces of darkness, not individuals. So, for instance, it's not the individuals working at the slaughterhouse. It's not the people who are making money off of the businesses. It's not the customers who are purchasing these products of cruelty. It's these spiritual forces of darkness that are like deceiving people into doing these things that are contrary to our nature. Because I believe humans were created in the image and likeness of God. And so we were created to show love and compassion. And so we're acting contrary to our nature because we're deceived by these spiritual powers of darkness. So to know that it's not like I hate this person because they're hurting animals, it's like we're trying to fight against these powers of ignorance and darkness. And so to me, that's also helps me to kind of show that compassion for people who might not be doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. And then you're saying that you're having compassion because you see that they are being, I mean, that they're victims in this too. The bus driver or the transport driver, that's a victim in this cruelty. So it's a whole different way of looking with compassion, which is beautiful.
Mhm.
And that's the shift, right? That's the shift of living in peace. When we look at others with compassion, then we don't have to be angry. We can have empathy for all.
Right.
So I would love to hear about a Creation Care Church, and you're the co-founder of Creation Care Church. Can you tell us about how the church began and its mission?
Sure. So Creation Care Church began almost exactly 3 years ago. we just finished our third year, and we're about to start our fourth year. And it came about as a coalition of ministries where there were, I think, 6 of us who basically we all had our own individual ministry. It had a large online presence, and sort of our unifying thing between us all was that we had this love for Jesus and a care for animals and stewarding creation. And so we were all supportive of each other and what we were each doing individually with our ministries. And we decided that there was this need for a church, to where there's all these people. We keep getting all these uh, people saying to us that they stopped going to church because of the church's lack of care for animals, and they don't have a place that they can call home. And so we just decided that we're going to start our own church. And the group all unanimously decided that I would be the one who would be doing the sermons. And so we kind of just decided to do that. And we did it for the first year and started building a following, and we just kept doing it. And yeah, so that's kind of how it came about, was just 6 different people, each with their own ministry, that we kind of joined forces and tried to create something that was greater than what any of us could do individually.
Well, again, it just keeps coming up that when we come together, we really are making change in the world. So that's beautiful. And Creation Care Church has really gotten, I mean, it has a great following, and you all are really working hard. So, what has been the church's most proudest or most meaningful accomplishment?
I think it's always about, from the beginning, it's been about the people. And so I think one of the things that really surprised me is just how much of kind of a magnet we've become for attracting people who have this calling. And so I think just the ability to sort of create community and be able to educate each other, but also encourage each other. So there's so many people who feel like uh, they've lost their faith because of the apathy toward animals within the church, or people who are Christians who feel like they keep being excluded for their vegan beliefs, and they have to kind of keep it quiet to themselves or whatever. But now they feel more emboldened to be outspoken to other people in their church. They feel empowered to actually have conversations with people and to go toe to toe with like the pastor of their church, knowing that the truth really is on their side. And so I think just the impact that we've been able to have with people on an individual level is probably the thing that is most meaningful about what we've been able to do so far.
Well, I can believe that definitely, because that's so important that we're able to speak with our own pastors and our own spiritual leaders. So, definitely. So, how has the organization grown over the years?
So we started out as just kind of like with a few ideas and not really sure what direction things were going to go. But then we've sort of expanded in a few different ways. One is that each of the people involved in Creation Care Church kind of has specialized roles now. And as we're sort of able to take on more kind of responsibilities, uh, one person, let's say Roz, she does all the sharing and social media stuff, so she can kind of focus on that. And like I'm putting together the messages, and so like that's a really important part. So I can kind of focus more on that. And we have like Kathy, who's responding to emails and helping manage like the Instagram and some of the volunteer stuff. And then we have like Lily, who's doing like the website and like the video stuff. And we have Tracy, who's doing like the book club, and he's helping us with like a lot of the organizational stuff, because he has more of a background with like uh, business type things. Um, and so we all kind of come together and have our own little things that we're able to contribute. And so then we're able to, I think, do more things. And we've also grown in that we have volunteers who step up to do certain things. So like Chris does our fellowships, and now we can do like a fellowship meeting each week, and people can get to know each other, and it helps encourage community, and we have like Sharon who's doing the Instagram and helping us to reach more audience. Now we have like Christina who's helping us with our accounting, so that when we're getting donations, we can like keep track of that and be ready to so it's like we have all these people who are kind of helping do the different things within our church. And so I think that's one of the ways that we've really grown as an organization, is we've sort of developed these specialized roles, and more people have come to help us with different things.
Well, how has your role grown throughout the time?
So my role kind of in the beginning was we just want you to do live talks, and the format that we thought would work best was I give the 30-minute message, and then we do like 30 minutes of Q&A. And in order to have like material, like what am I going to talk about? Am I just going to like make up sermons every week? And what I was doing was I was writing a book, and it was basically 40 study guides on like the 40 most frequently asked questions regarding like veganism in the Bible. And so it's like, well, those could be our first 40 live talks, is we could just do those 40 chapters of the book basically. And so that's how it started. But then over time, once we went through those, it took less than a year to do that. Then we started expanding into other topics, and then what I really wanted to start doing, which we started doing more of this past year, was doing history slideshow presentations. And that's where I would sort of not just look at things from the perspective of like the traditional sort of Catholic Orthodox Protestant perspectives, but actually looking into the historical evidence as to what was Jesus and the apostles like, what were they really like, and what kind of evidence do we have of what Christianity was like in the 2nd century and even back to the 1st century. And those ended up being pretty popular among our followers. And so we decided in the 4th year that we're going to do even more of those, and looking into asking questions like, if there's all this evidence that Jesus and the apostles were vegan, then why are there these passages in the Bible that suggest they were these fishermen that weren't vegan? Like, how did that come about? And so just sort of looking into the question, not just from like the traditional like 4th century Nicene Christian perspective, but looking into like, did these texts even exist in the 1st century, or like when in the 2nd century did these passages come about, and who put them there, and how can we attest to them? It's like those kinds of questions that academic scholars are interested in, but that you don't really hear at all in churches. So we're kind of moving more in that direction of asking those questions rather than kind of avoiding them.
Well, that's wonderful, because a lot of people take things for granted. So I love this exploration of really digging deep into what's really going on here. Questioning and just asking, I mean, respectfully, like, who wrote the Bible, and what was the intention behind it? I mean, that can answer, I mean, that can say a lot. So just exploring is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So how can a person contact your organization, the Creation Care Church, Craig?
So if you have, let's say, questions, or you're just trying to reach us, you could email info@creationcarechurch.org. If you're looking to find out like more information about us, you could just go to creationcarechurch.org. That's our website. And there's an about page, there's our vision, there's all kinds of resources. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you just look up Creation Care Church on YouTube, I think we're the ones that come up. There's a little green and white lion and a lamb symbol. And that's where we have all of our sermon live talks that we've done over the past 3 years. So I think we have 141 of them so far. And they're ranging like the whole spectrum of topics. Like if you encounter any sort of objection to veganism, or have any question about veganism in the Bible, 9 times out of 10, we've already done a full sermon on it. So then, of course, if you have any questions, if you're like, hey, I encountered this question at my church, or when I was doing outreach to a Christian, and they said, God likes the smell of animal sacrifices. And I had no idea how to respond to that. And so, what do I say to that? And it's like, oh, well, here's what we can, send us an email and we'll direct you to the live talk and say, well, here's the talk we did on the burning aroma. And so then you have a 30-minute talk that you with full of dozens of scripture verses that you could go to learn more about this topic. And the short answer is no, God doesn't like the smell of animal sacrifices. That's a misreading that people have.
Well, that's a great answer. What about, I know that sometimes I'm out and someone comes up with pamphlets and wants to tell it to me about God. What do you say to those people? Is there anything, I mean, do you broach veganism with them?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing I do is I say, yeah, here's our pamphlet of Creation Care Church. And yeah, I think it kind of depends on who the person is. If over the course of like the first few minutes of the conversation, I get the sense that they're actually open to learning and interested in hearing what I have to say, then I'm much more likely to like provide them with resources and have that conversation and answer their questions. But if I get the sense that they're just trying to like find the loophole to like win the argument and like just so they can walk away feeling like, oh, I can ignore everything this person said, and it's like, well, I don't want to just waste my time. There's more important things I could be doing here than, you know, trying to make you feel justified in hurting animals or whatever. So yeah, if someone's genuinely open to learning, I'll spend all day with them if I need to, you know.
Yes, and could you tell us of any time that you've really had spoken with a spiritual leader, a reverend, or pastor, or rabbi, and they really wanted to hear more? Because sometimes we just don't hear those stories.
Yeah, so actually, this was one of my most memorable experiences as a vegan. A job I used to work at, I would be traveling to convention centers each weekend. And so I'd be traveling sometimes internationally, sometimes just within the US. And there was a convention that was in Orlando, Florida. And then the next weekend, there was a convention in Providence, Rhode Island. So, like up the entire East Coast of the US. And usually I fly from one to the next. But one of my colleagues who's in Orlando, he's like, hey, I'm going to drive to Providence. You should come with me. And I was like, that's like how many hours of driving? That's going to take the whole week just to drive up there. He's like, yeah, it'll be fun. And so I was like, I thought about it. I was like, okay, under one condition. And I just kind of threw this out there thinking he'd be like, no way. And this would just be the end of it. But I was like, the entire road trip, you have to be vegan and that we're going to eat all vegan food the whole time. And immediately he was like, sure, I'm in. So I was like, all right, well, that was my price and you agreed to it. So I guess this is what we're doing. So we took this, what we called the vegan road trip from Orlando, Florida to Providence, Rhode Island. And as we went, like he had no idea even what veganism was when we first started. And so he got a lot of education about why people go vegan. He downloaded Happy Cow app and he learned about all these vegan foods that he could eat and experiment with. And we ate this delicious vegan restaurants the whole trip up. And then at the end of it, he didn't go vegan, which was like whatever. But he learned a lot and it planted the seed. And then a few years later, he messaged me and he said, hey, just wanted to let you know, it's been 6 months now that I've been vegan. And then every month he would message me again and say 7 months now, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. And so now he actually did go vegan and he's been vegan for over a year. And so it ended up having the good ending that I was hoping for. So that was one of my most memorable experiences, was the vegan road trip that ended up culminating in he did go vegan.
I love that. That's wonderful. That's a feel good story, definitely. So, Craig, tell me about your events that Creation Care Church offers, because I know you all do a lot of things now.
Yeah, so we have a number of things that we do. I guess the main thing is the Friday Night Live talks, which right now I'm on break for a month, but we're going to be resuming that later this month. And so we do these talks on Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, where it's kind of like a sermon or like a history slideshow talk. And so that's where you can come and learn more about the connection with like veganism and Christianity. And then we also have a vegan Christian discipleship school, which meets once a month on Zoom. And so that is where I go over in depth. It's more of like a discussion class where we go over a study guide that I prepared on a particular topic related to veganism in the Bible. And we also have a prayer group that meets once a month. And we have a book club that meets once a month where we're starting on a book by Lisa Kemmerer. I know that you interviewed her a little while ago. And her book, Animals in Christianity, is what we're going to be starting in. And so we offer all these kinds of things that we do, lots of things that you can participate in. We have fellowship each week on Zoom. And so if you want to meet other people who are vegan, who care about animals, who uh, care about Jesus, and you just or you just want to check things out, see what we're about. You don't have to be Christian. You don't have to be vegan to be part. You could just kind of come and learn and meet people and whatever capacity that you want to be involved.
Well, that's wonderful that you have all these resources for people. Well, I have a question. So I love snakes, and people are terrified of snakes, and they'll say that's the representation of evil. So, as a snake lover, what can I say? Because I think snakes are God's creation also, and I don't want them to be hated, and they're an animal. As an animal lover, I love them. What would you say to help me here?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I've gotten this one before, so let me try to think on the spot.
Okay.
I know that they probably get this reputation because of Genesis chapter 3, with like the serpent in the garden that like deceives Eve, and so that's kind of like whenever there's a snake depicted uh, in relation to the Bible, that's the one that's the most well-known one. But that's not the only snake that's mentioned in the Bible. And in fact, when Moses he's healing the people, he puts this like it's like a gold snake or whatever on like a pole that whenever you look at that snake, you become healed. And so this snake is actually representing healing in this Moses episode. And then in the New Testament, it says that Jesus is like Jesus on the cross is like that snake that heals essentially. So the snake in Genesis 3 represents like Satan deceiving humanity, but the snake with Moses is like Jesus on the cross, which represents the opposite. It's like the healing. So I guess if somebody has like a negative impression of like snakes because of Genesis 3, I might say, well, what about Jesus? Like he's also the one that's lifted up in the wilderness to heal you. So maybe if you kind of go down that road, that might leave a different impression on people about snakes.
Well, that's great information because I remember reading, and I had a book on the Bible for children with little eyes. I think was the name of it. I loved that book, and I remember that story with the snake and everything. So I'm gonna go get I still have my old book. I'm gonna go get it out, and I'm gonna research this further because
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I love. I mean, just as you do, all animals, all creatures, right? They're all beautiful. So.
And snakes are mentioned in, I believe it's Isaiah 65, when it's talking about the new earth and the restored kingdom. It specifically says that, and the dust will be the serpent's food. So snakes are mentioned as being in the kingdom restored. So they're part of his very good design.
Well, that's wonderful to know. I'm gonna next time I'm at the nature center with my snakes, I volunteer. Then I will have this. I'll be prepared for people that question.
Awesome.
So, all right, and again, please, if you have I see some comments, and if you have questions, please post them. I have a cat that's trying to get in the picture right now. So if you wonder what's going on over here, and we have a nice comment here from Jason Bueno. Thank you. Thankful for Craig and Creation Care Church.
Awesome, and we're thankful for you too, Jason. He's one who developed some of our graphics on like our merchandise. We have a store that's Graceful Pause. That's Pause like Pause. It's where you can get Creation Care Church merchandise, and a lot of that merchandise the graphics were designed by Jason. So we appreciate you too, Jason.
Wonderful. Well, that's another good thing to know. You all have a lot of resources for people. So, well, let me go ahead with these. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before I go on with some of the comments, Greg?
No, we can go to the comments.
Okay. All right. So Simone is saying, I feel really burnt out with all the activism I do. It feels like I'm always putting myself in an unpopular position and get questioned, belittled, ridiculed, etc. It's a constant battle and it's exhausting. It makes me question if I'm making a difference for the animals. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I definitely feel that. It's I know that when we do fur protests, those are one of the things that's real common in Southern California, and we'll go there and putting pressure on stores to drop fur, and we'll do it like in the mall, and people walking by in the mall, they'll throw things at us, spit on us, yell at us, push us, take our signs, all kinds of things. And it's like why do we go there and do this? Like, obviously it's not fun to have those things happen to you, and you're right, it's exhausting, and it takes a toll to be able to do that. But then one of the great things specifically about the fur campaign is that it's been working by putting this pressure on all these stores to drop fur. And then whenever they do drop it, we move on to the next store to get them to do it. It's very successful that every couple months, these major retail chains are dropping fur. And it's been several stores so far that it's succeeded at. And so it's a very effective kind of thing. And so I think the fact that that particular one has tangible short-term results and that we're actually winning the campaigns, that makes it, I think, easier, or maybe easier is the wrong word. Maybe it's less likely to burn us out knowing that we're winning. So that's one thing that's really helpful. And if you feel like you're not really making a difference, first I'll say you are, whether you realize it or not. But if you want to feel more like I need to see a difference, I'd say two things can be really helpful with that. One is like join like the anti-fur protests, because those are things where they are actually winning and making progress. And another thing that I found tends to be a lot more successful is when you focus on local things. Like, for instance, in LA, there was a protest asking like a beauty shop to drop mink lashes because it's made from mink hurting animals. And that was the one simple ask, was just drop mink lashes from your local store, just one store, not like a whole retail chain. So it doesn't have to go up to corporate or whatever for change to happen. And this one store, at the end of the day, that one protest, they put up a sign in their window that said, "We no longer carry mink lashes." And so we won that one day for that one protest. So if you start smaller and have smaller asks that you're trying to do, like making smaller changes, it'll be more tangible and you'll see what those changes are. And so that might help make you feel like, hey, I literally made this change. It was maybe a small thing, but this is something that I did because of these efforts that I put in.
Well, that's very good advice, definitely. And it all does make a difference. Here's another comment, that's Ron. It is often those in the church community and even the vicar who have a hard heart and deaf ears towards the plight of animals. And I'll follow up with this other one. It's often the church community that most resistant to being compassionate to animals. I find it unbelievable that these Christians who purport to value compassion, kindness, and mercy are unable to extend these values and behaviors to God's creatures. I honestly feel I do not belong and have often considered leaving church as I feel I'm surrounded by hypocrites.
Amen. I couldn't have said that better myself. And that's exactly the sentiment that I was talking about earlier, where that was one of our main motivations for starting Creation Care Church, is because you're not alone. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of people that have had that same testimony, where it's frustrating. And you're absolutely right that these are the values that are of God, and that if we're in God's image and likeness, these are supposed to be the values we're living by. And I often tell people, like, living by the Spirit, you don't turn it on and turn it off. Like, you don't turn on the Spirit and bear all these, fruits of kindness and compassion and mercy toward people, and then do the exact opposite to animals. That's not how the Spirit works. So it's just on all the time, and you're supposed to be acting this way toward people and animals. And if the church, especially church leaders, are not doing this, they're not living by this example, then one thing I often tell people in churches who aren't vegan, I'm like, if you're arguing on the side trying to justify being cruel to animals and not showing them mercy, not showing them compassion, how in the world are you going to reach an atheist vegan who wants to show mercy and compassion to animals? And you're arguing on the opposite side trying to justify the not showing these attributes toward animals. It's just not possible. And so I tell them, point blank, I'm like, even if you're not convinced that you should be caring about animals, you're the reason that these people don't know Jesus, and it's your fault. Like, can you live with that? Do you really care more about your bacon than about, let's say, someone's salvation? And that's a thing that some people are really convicted by, and that causes them to change, because then it's like, wow, you're right. And Paul even talks about this in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, and also in Romans 14, about how if your food causes your brother to stumble, you're no longer walking in love, and he's things like that. And so I think that this should, you're an extremely powerful witness. A lot of times churches, they'll say, oh, well, we don't have any vegans that go to our church, so like we can have our barbecues and whatever, and it doesn't affect anyone because none of us are vegan. It's like, there's a reason that there's no vegans at your church. Like, it's not because there's just no vegans that are like looking for a church. It's because you're creating an inhospitable environment where you're ignoring this will of God when it comes to animals. And so people who hear this calling and care about animals the way God wants us to care about animals, like, you're not being a good church for these people. And so I think just really, like, over the years, I've become a little more direct about this with churches, because I've just seen it over and over and over again, and there's so little impetus to change. But yeah, you're absolutely right that churches should be taking the lead, like when it comes to anything related to caring for animals and being stewards of His created world. Christians should be the first ones there. We shouldn't be known among vegans as like the people who are hypocrites and stubborn and hard to reach. We should be the ones that are known as like, these are the people that are constantly stepping up to take the lead. So I've hoped that more churches will follow this lead. But at least for now, we have All Creatures, we have Creation Care Church. So hopefully, at least between the two of us, you feel like there's a place at least that you could be surrounded by other people who feel the way you do.
Yes, definitely. And thank goodness for you all and others online that are there for the ones that feel like they are left out of their church. I remember one time this isn't even to the level, I found a little dog that was just running the streets. And I ran to this church that I was going to, and I said, please, can you announce this poor little dog I just found? Can you ask for help? But I was very shrugged off by someone that I really considered a really beautiful pastor. And I was so disappointed. I don't even know. I felt like it was like such a big impact that I didn't, it's still to this day, that one thing stands out of disregarding this little being who was, I mean, he had been burnt on his back and he needed help, but how in the world that didn't count enough at that moment? I can't wrap my head around it.
Hmm.
And it's those
Yeah,
kind of
that
things
is
that
sad.
really stick with people. Yeah, I mean, those are the sad things that stick. And I mean, I guess the only thing I could say is just to pray for that minister, that reverend, to make the connection of all living beings. Because how can you be preaching? How can they not see the God in every living being?
Hmm.
And how would you,
Yeah.
how would you, if I was to say, there's not a God in a vulture, God's not in a vulture, what would you say to that?
Well, in the scriptures, there's this term. It's called nefesh chaya, and that's living soul in Hebrew. And so it says that the animals they are a living soul, just like people are a living soul. And so if God speaks the animals into existence and he speaks people into existence, it says in Ecclesiastes, it's the same breath of life that's in both humans and animals. Humans have no advantage over the animals. That to me, that's enough. That it shows that God cares enough about animals to speak them into existence, to breathe the breath of life into them, and that they all belong to God. They don't belong to me to decide what I want to do with them. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to anybody else. And so it's our job to be these good stewards of the animals, to be those who take care of them and who lead them in the way of peace. And so if someone says, well, there's uh, there's nothing with God in the vulture, I'd be like, well, have you read your Bible? Because that's not what the Bible says.
Yes, that's very true. And I think and I think the Bible is about love. And so, I mean, there's so many people that are like that are angry about the Bible and saying, God, that I can't follow this Bible um, that God doesn't stand up for animals with the lamb slaughter, right? And they don't want to have anything to do with the church. What would you say to those people?
Well, uh, first thing, I have kind of 2 points to make about this. One is that the Bible isn't the goal. Like the Bible is just pointing us to the reality of God's Spirit. And so that's how we learn about who God is and receive his Spirit. But then once we receive that Spirit and live according to it, like that's the goal. Um, and the other thing is that you said, why isn't God doing anything about like this cruelty and even about the lambs that are being slaughtered? And I would say that's exactly what Jesus did do and is doing. And I'm reminded of the disrupting of the temple. So in Jesus's time, there is this temple in Jerusalem, and people think of a temple, they think of, oh, it must be like a church or something. It's like, no, no, no. This was a slaughterhouse, and that's where they would come and sacrifice animals, slaughter them there. And throughout all the prophets, Amos, Isaiah, Hosea, Isaiah, a consistent theme throughout the prophets was God hates animal sacrifices. He does not desire them. He does not require them. He wants them to stop. And yet these people running the temple, it's a business to them, just like slaughterhouses are a business. And so he's against those things. That's not his will. And so what Jesus does, he comes in line with all the message of the prophets, because he himself is a prophet. He's more than a prophet, but he's also a prophet. And he goes and he disrupts the temple. And he says, get these out of here. You're making my father's house a house of merchandise, selling animals for profit to be slaughtered. says, you've made this a den of violence, parets. And so like he went in there and disrupted that. He liberated the animals. It says that he specifies the animals. He's like, all the birds that were being sold for slaughter and all the cattle and all the lambs, he released them in an act of animal liberation. And then that's not all he did either. There was this ritual that he was disrupting. This was particularly the Passover. Sorry, there's background noise. But there's this ritual of Passover that would happen each year where they would sacrifice these lambs as a way of atoning for their sins and whatnot. Or no, not atoning for sins, but like as a way of God would pass over with the wrath. It was a representation of like whatever. And so what he did was he himself walked to his own death to put an end to this. And so he's the lamb that was slain, the lamb that walked, the innocent lamb that walked to his own slaughter, where he literally was crucified on that Passover weekend on the same day as all these lambs are being sacrificed for this ungodly ritual that they were performing. And so my answer would be, what is God doing about it? He's doing everything about it. He's walking, God in the flesh, Jesus is walking to his own death, and he's disrupting the temple, and he's sending all of his prophets saying, I don't want this. Stop doing this. This is contrary to my will. And so what more do you want from a loving God than to do these things? That's my God that I serve.
That's beautiful. Yes, a loving God. I mean, that's my God too. Exactly. God doesn't want violence. Definitely. So I see we're coming up on the end of the hour. Is there anything you wanted to share? If you could share your favorite verse of the Bible, maybe that brings you peace for those who still would need something to hang on to, that would be beautiful, Craig.
All right. So there's a passage that it's not one verse, but maybe it's a few verses. It's in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 6 through 9. And I'll kind of paraphrase here, where it's talking about God's kingdom restored, where his very good design is, it's this hope that we have that we're not going to be living in this fallen world forever. And he talks about all the animals getting along. It says that the wolf and the lamb will lie together, and the fatling and the little child will lead them, and even the lion is eating straw like the ox. And so this little child leading the animals, they're leading them in the way of peace. So all the animals are getting along, the people are getting along, and the people are getting along with the animals, and nobody's hurting each other, nobody's living in fear. And then I like the way it closes in verse 9. It says, they will not hurt nor destroy anywhere on my holy mountain, for the whole earth will have the knowledge of God as the sea is full of water. And so this knowledge of God, where the animals know God, the people know God, and by knowing God, it's not just like, hey, I know who God is, and then I'm going to do the opposite of his will. No, I know God, and it is God, the Spirit of God that's in me. It's this sort of very intimate knowledge where we're following God and living according to his ways. And we're living peacefully, and we're teaching others to live peacefully as well. And just that lo rawa, that's the Hebrew for do not hurt or destroy. I know that you're probably familiar with the Sanskrit version, which is ahimsa, do not hurt. And so this is the Hebrew version. And so to me, that's sort of a snapshot of what really is God's will. Why did God create the world? He created us to be in this kind of peaceful sort of kinship relationship with each other, and that he could be our God and we could be his creation. And that plan that he has, even though we're in this sort of temporary interim of a fallen world where he's calling us to repent and turn back to him and his ways, and he's ready to heal us and restore things. We're in this sort of place where we're waiting, but we have that hope. And it says his word will not return void. The end has been declared from the beginning. And so that's the hope that we have to look forward to, is that there is going to be a vegan world, just like in the beginning. And all the animals and all the people are going to live in peace. And he has the power to resurrect even from the dead. So even though some of our loved ones might have been lost, and there will come a time when our lives may come to an end, but he has that power to bring back to life as well in his kingdom. So I think that's one of my favorite verses, and I use it in probably about half of the live talks that we do, because I think it's just really encouraging.
Well, that is beautiful. So tell us how we can get a hold of you, all of your websites, please.
Okay, so creationcarechurch.org is the main website. We also have a Facebook page, Creation Care Church. We have a YouTube channel. We have an Instagram account, and so those are all ways that you can get involved with what we're doing. And we also have a link tree. So if you go to just look up Creation Care Church link tree, and it should be the first thing that comes up. And then there's links to all the things we do. So if you're like, hey, I want to meet other vegans, well, there's the fellowship link. And it's like, hey, I want to be involved in a prayer call, there's a prayer call link. If you want Creation Care Church merchandise, there's a link to the store as well. So that's sort of a all in one place where you could find links to all the things that we do. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you can email info@creationcarechurch.org.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I want to make sure everybody knows to go to www.all-creatures.org. www.all-creatures.org to check out the hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week without break, or sign up for our weekly newsletter. So be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan faith-based resources near you. And if you know of a resource that's not on our list, please reach out to Executive Director Tams at all-creatures.org. So this has been very inspiring, and I've learned so much, Craig. I'm ready. I feel like I'm equipped. You've given me resources also to reach out to later, and I'm very, I just thankful for Saron, his beautiful heart, or her, I'm not sure, I'm sorry, for your beautiful heart, Saron, and Jason for watching, and for everyone else on the replay. We just want to, I just want to validate you all for doing such an amazing job, for stepping up for animals, and Craig also. We're very blessed to be part of this vegan world. So thank you, Craig, so much.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me. It's always nice to connect with you.
All right, well, blessings, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.